Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the Now What Show. I have John with us today, and we'll get to his introduction in just a minute. We're delighted to have a little bit of a different topic around some custom work and other things today. But now, before we get into that with John, I would like to do a special welcome from our sponsor, Go Imagine. We are so grateful to have them as our season sponsor this year for the season. So, Go Imagine is focused on building the maker community through a handmade marketplace, maker business education, custom websites, and a social app designed for artists called Maker Circle. The Go Imagine community includes thousands of handmade business owners throughout the United States, passionate about growing a handmade platform dedicated to quality handmade items while focusing on social good that's helping children in need. And you can go ahead and check them out at goimagine.com. And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome John to the show. And John has even brought some props to also help explain his business. So, welcome, John. And can you share a little bit more about yourself and your business?
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much for having me. The little guy she's referring to is what I state as Gronks. Um, Basically, these are made from excess from my work. So I do agricultural engineering, a lot of work on various different farming machinery, silos, other stuff like that. Some of it does come from America, so these bolts are actually imperial thread. Hence, when I'm not working on American machinery, they're kind of obsolete. So I do use them with Liberty from some of these. These are some sprockets off some of our machines that I've taken apart, and just I think an old spanner I had, just to give it some character with a paint and a wooden base. Um, yeah, there are a little bit of character in each one of them.
Mhm. How did you get into making Gronks? I mean, they're so colorful, they're so cute. How did you get started doing this?
It's actually the tubing is mainly off. I do some spiral staircases that go up silos, so they can do the top hatch and access other bits of the silo. And I just had loads of basically about that length scrap. And then I was also working on some box section. So I just kind of was. I think my boss has said keep yourself busy for a bit, like, but not like basically stay on call, but stay in the workshop. So I just started messing around, made a little character as a gift. And then one of the other family members wanted one as well, but they wanted one with an Xbox controller with a TV. So I made them one of them, and then people said I should start maybe advertising and selling them, and just kind of snowballed from there.
Oh, that's fabulous. Keep yourself busy and doing something while you're on call. And here you go. Okay, I'll just create my little side business here.
Yeah.
Um, so, so you actually have an interesting sourcing. So do you basically get most of your materials off of like jobs and things that you've done, or how do you go about kind of sourcing the materials that you use for your grunts?
Well, it's interesting. I always ask because technically the machines I've taken apart and the parts I use are either my companies or other individuals. But a lot of it, after I've done a job, I guess I make a good impression. Um, I usually they ask, oh, you get small talk and that, and then I'll show them a few, and then they usually take me around to what I call like a gold mine. They're like, oh, I've got this, some old horseshoes, I've got that, or bits and bobs. So a lot of it, and a lot of the people that come into the workshop sometimes to see me, they'll purposely save stuff and bring it in for me, which I now have two pallets with four pallet sides high of just very random stuff. My partner's uncle brought me an old bike engine to strip apart, so I took a lot of sprockets and pistons and stuff out of that. So a lot of it is donated, but it is laborious sometimes getting the bits that you can use. Some bits, won't work, and then. But I'm always a bit of, I guess, a hoarder because I hate chucking stuff away because then I have it in the back of my head. I'll have to dig it out, but I'll find a bit like I've never done a mosaic, but I imagine it's the piece that will fit is somewhere in that box, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
No, absolutely makes sense. And it's also a fun way for other people to get in on what do I do with some of these things, right? So I was originally raised on a farm and I go into a few of these sheds. There's stuff. There just always is, right? And you go
Yeah,
around, they're like, ooh, someone can, they always hang on to it because they're like, maybe I'll need that stuff someday.
yep,
But then they're like, ooh, John can use that and make a gronk out of it. Here's stuff, here's stuff.
yeah. A lot of customers after doing the job, I'll leave them one for their office, and they say it cheers them up most days. So I guess that's a kind gesture from myself to them. Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now you sell these on at craft fairs and things as well, right?
Yeah, it's mainly promotional. I mean, I'd love to sell. We usually take about a selection of 20 with us because we usually just
Hmm.
have one stall space. But mainly, it's kind of like an exhibition. So we have the card, and people can email. So we have like an Etsy shop, and you can find us on Instagram, the Wright Scraps. But the
Hmm.
mainly they'll contact us and they'll see something they like. You can buy it if as you like, but you can also say, well, my uncle used to do this. Can you make one with a hand drill? Can you make one with such a thing? So we do try and make them special for each individual. Um,
Hmm.
it is laborious again. People do choose different color schemes, but we do try and accommodate for that as best we can as well.
Hmm.
Uh,
And it's interesting that you basically take them almost like you said as a little exhibition and you're kind of displaying what you're doing, but you use that to seed the idea in a lot of cases of creating something custom and special for people. So I think it's a unique sales strategy, right? To say, well, I'm going to the craft fair really as a discovery, and it's a little bit of a long game, right? Where people are like, ooh, and then they have to kind of take the card and then go follow and look at things and think about things. And
Basically, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of the sales cycle might be a little bit longer, but it's an interesting one because it's such a unique gift. Do you tend to find that your buyers, is it a mix of men and women? Are there more men that buy? What can you tell us about the kind of the typical profile of who's buying Gronks?
Uh, I find men are quite more impulsive, so they'll see one and bite. Yeah, I'll get that one. That sounds. Whereas it seems to be a lot of partners buying gifts for the husbands, and they'll be more. He likes this color. I want this, like a golfing one or something like that. So they seem a bit more involved.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they're mainly the custom orders. Seems to be mainly female clientele.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's really a pretty big difference, right? Like, well,
Yeah,
I can peg that that's what he's gonna do, and I can peg that maybe is what she's gonna
so
do.
I've got them in a couple of shops on the shelves, and yeah, it seems to be a lot of males will. I think one bloke bought two one day because there's two fishing ones, and he like two on his desk sort of thing. They're very impulsive buyers. They'll be like, "Yep, not seen something like this before. I'll get that." Whereas I guess because we do have cards there saying we make uh, like tailored to the person, then a lot of females seem to see, which is great. My husband does this, or my son really likes this, and can you try and
Mhm.
do that? Which I always try and accommodate. It is a bit of a challenge, and it really depends on what scrap I have available at the time, whether it's going to suit or not.
Sure, sure. So do you ever find that people put orders in way in advance and then let you kind of figure out if you can source it? Or do people typically, when they're doing custom orders, do they typically are like, no, I kind of have a date and it's close in time? What are you finding as you're developing out this custom business?
It's very sporadic. There's some like you said, birthdays where you have to have it ready in a certain allotted time. We've been quite lucky. We've had probably 2 to 3 weeks to do it, which can be a bit of a struggle because I work away a lot during the week. So Monday to Friday, I can be 8 hours drive away. I can be Belfast or Scotland or something like that, and I leave at 5 in the morning Monday, get back at 8 at night on Fridays, and then I've got catch up with family duties, and then hopefully get welding at some point. Then you've got to spray paint it, and it's yeah, I enjoy doing it. Otherwise, I don't think there'd be much much point.
Right. Yeah, if you didn't love doing it, if it wasn't a great creative outlet, you wouldn't do it because you got to fit it in around the rest of life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so as you have kind of, how did you take that first leap from, hey, I made these cute little ones and I made this one from a friend to, yeah, let's make enough to do a craft fair. Tell me a little bit more about how did you end up, because that's a big next step. How
I
did
guess
that
it
happen for you?
it mainly snowballed with the custom orders, and they were getting a lot of interest. I mean, our Instagram's got nearly 3,000 people following it now, so it's I guess that gives us a bit of confidence in a way. and
Hmm.
and it can be a nice day out the craft fair. I don't know if many of your listeners have done one, but it is, you engage with people, you get to talk about your craft, and it can be quite a nice day. I do suggest to take your own lunch with you because you do end up spending most of your profits on coffee and donuts and I've done something else.
That's truth. Having done that myself, you're like, wait a second, I should have maybe brought my own food, but
Yeah.
but it's still fun to see what other people bring and make and the creativity that kind of goes into that whole process. So if you were to describe what, so now you've started building out the craft fairs, you started selling some online, and you've talked about that. Where are you thinking you want to go with this business?
We do have a few exciting concepts. We've had a company that make game boards that are interested in having them as like figurines, and
Cool.
which is very exciting. I'm also attempting to write a little kids book about them. Um,
Mm.
just I guess promoting recycling and the concept and little characters and stuff. But I just enjoy them. They're like something I enjoy doing. They all have their own little. I do sometimes struggle selling some of them because I do like them. Uh, my partner's granddad, he's probably got about six of things I make. Whenever I bring them back and he sees them, he's like, "Can I have that one?" I was like, "Of course you can." It's
He's gonna have his own little exhibition pretty soon of
it,
Gronks.
yeah, he pretty much does, to be honest. Because I made him quite a few garden planters out of augers, um, grain augers and stuff like that. So they're very unique, and yeah, he loves them. He's got three in his garden at the moment, and I've made him a few like birds out of stuff and things like that. Yeah, I just like hopefully it brings a bit of joy to people. Mm.
Tell me about the okay, you gotta tell me about the grain augers and these garden. How did you do that?
Um, well, basically the in a grain silo to condition the grain, so
Yep.
they can be 10 meters, 20 meters high. Like the American ones are incredible how high they go,
Oh
but
yeah.
they do snap sometimes, which makes them obsolete.
Sure.
Some of the excess ones is basically because it's quite an intricate spiraled effect anyway. So and then
Mhm.
I just make stuff to hold the planter on top, and then I try and get a bit creative with the legs using sometimes conveyor chain or something, so it looks like roots are coming out. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I got them in a couple of shops. They, they don't sell that often, sadly, but because they're quite, I don't know, I guess a statement
They're
piece.
yes. Your custom garden grain auger is not not gonna go in everybody's yard.
No, no, exactly. Yeah.
So it really sounds like kinda you're really into recycling at a whole bunch of levels, not just the little guys, but even into creating the bigger things. Um, Where do you think that came from? Has it always been something that's just kind of been part of you, or was it an
Uh,
awareness that came at some point? Talk about that a little bit more.
well, I lived in Australia for 9 years, and I used to work in some quite remote areas in different workshops or stuff like that. And I think one of my first jobs there when I was 22, I was still backpacking, but I lived in an actual steel yard. I lived in a little caravan in a steel yard. That's where I was working. So some of my time, because I didn't really know anyone, I'd just spend it in the workshop, and I get bits of chain and make like little sheep and stuff like that, and just give them as gifts to people. Because I
Okay.
never thought I never really thought of selling them, but it's like, oh, I made this when I was bored. Do you want it, sort of thing? Or I've made like butterflies of people to put on people's graves, and um, just I guess that's how it started. And then people have always told me to sell them, but I just never really until recently started. Well, last year really was to get the confidence to do it, I guess.
Yeah, it isn't it amazing how for so many of us and myself as an artisan food maker, and I do a few pop-ups a year with that. There were many years of people saying you should sell this before I was like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know, right? It takes you a while, and then you hear it enough times, and then eventually you're like, yeah, maybe I should do that.
Yeah.
Try that. Well, you run out of people to give things to, frankly.
Well, I guess the farming background, like me and my dad used to have sheep, and I used to work on
Mhm.
a dairy part time when I was in high school. But I guess it's that like making, like mend and make do sort of thing concept. And I
Yep.
do that a lot with work because when we import stuff from America or from Europe, sometimes things are missing. Sometimes like you know, I guess stuff you can't foresee happens. And like this week, I made a platform just out of three other platforms, kind of like put them all together and then made it work. But it looks the part. I know it is a platform, so I know it's structurally sound. And the farmer's just like, well, you saved me a lot of money, sort of thing. So, but yeah, as long as the job gets done, and I guess it's the same for the Gronks, you can repurpose anything really within
Mhm.
reason.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're also right, of some of that ag background and, coming from a farm and things too, you just have to sort of figure out how to do things, and so interesting, you spent a lot of time in Australia. I was just there last year. I had done some artisan interviews, over the holidays and things, and that really struck me about Australia is how self-sufficient people have to be because especially once you get out of Sydney, Melbourne, some of the other areas, there's nobody coming to rescue you. So you
No,
you really have to make do with things, right?
I think I was one place I worked. I was 12 hours from the nearest like shop or anything like that. It's yeah, it can be a bit daunting, really.
Yep, that it can be quite remote. So, well, this has been a ton of fun. So why don't you tell our audience where can they find you to learn more? How do they follow you on all the socials so they can like all your cute little gronks that you make?
My last name's Wright, so the Wright Scraps, so the and then WRGHT Scraps. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We do have an Etsy account as well, but we do list stuff. But feel free to message if you've got an idea. We will try and accommodate. So yeah, I think friends just messaged me. They want a Gronk next to a windmill because he does like work in the flower industry.
Mhm.
So yeah, any concepts if you want to have a look. Recently started making lamps out of old hand drills and stuff. So yeah, have a look at the Instagram. That's probably the best place to have a look.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, John. And thank you, everyone listening in. And a special thank you to our sponsor, Go Imagine. And we will see you next time.
Thanks very much, guys.